Welcome to the Chilling Ghost Stories channel. Today we bring you a famous Chinese ghost story titled The Moonlight Mystery. If you enjoy the story, please give us a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you. Now let's get started. Chapter 16. Moonlight, Shattered Face, takes the stage.
She is just like me, she won't let you go either. Yè Xīn heard these words and shuddered. It turned out that the woman with the scar on her face had been standing behind her for who knows how long, gleefully throwing out a remark. Yè Xīn wanted to say something to appear strong but realized that doing so would only deceive herself and others. She bit her lip, and tears welled up in her eyes. The scarred woman plopped down on the chair next to Yè Xīn's bed, muttering, "Suan ding ding, long time no see. Do you know? That's just one of the many roles Wang Lan-san plays. She always adopts the role of Ding Ding to get close to the female students at your school. This is a classic case of personality fragmentation. You're a medical student, you must know about this, right?" Yè Xīn despised her with all her might. She was about to press the call button for help but then hesitated, realizing the woman hadn't done anything truly outrageous yet. She decided to ignore her and left the room to get some fresh air. The scarred woman followed her. "I know, you don't have any illness." Yè Xīn stopped. For the first time in many days, someone had directly told her that she wasn't sick. But sadly, that person was a mental patient. Actually, compared to other kinds of illnesses, the rate of misdiagnosing mental disorders is much higher, the woman said, and Yè Xīn was surprised. The words didn't sound like they were coming from a mental patient. "What exactly are you? How do you know I'm not sick?" Yè Xīn finally spoke up. The scarred woman calmly replied, "I used to be a doctor. Do you think I look like a patient? But last night, you acted like a wild animal." Yè Xīn snapped. "How can you blame me? This whole ward is full of women. I have my natural instincts," the scarred woman said nonchalantly. "You say you're not sick, so why have you been here for so many years?" Yè Xīn asked, not knowing what had compelled her to start a conversation. They both walked out of the room and down the hallway. "Because society doesn't accept me. Do you know why my face ended up like this? You're silent, but I know you're wondering, aren't you?" Yè Xīn nodded, sensing that this woman was not like other patients. "After graduating from medical school, I was assigned to work at a municipal hospital. There was a senior doctor with excellent expertise and a charming demeanor. All the female nurses and young female doctors were infatuated with him. But I, being absorbed in my work, hardly ever joked with him. He wasn't like Liu Xiaohui, real name Zhanhua, a revered person from the Warring States period in ancient China. Though he had a wife and kids, his behavior was carefree. Whenever female colleagues approached him, he gave in to them and often made advances on me too. I didn't want to get involved in such trouble and look down on his character, so I kept my distance. One day, we were scheduled to work the same shift. I was sitting in the duty room writing a medical report when he came in, started talking about absurd things, and tried to touch me. I refused, but he didn't stop. He then held me tightly, and began kissing and touching me. As I struggled, the door suddenly flung open. It was his wife. She had heard the rumors about his infidelity, so she had come to the hospital unannounced and caught us in the act. She thought we were having an affair and angrily cursed us before storming out. A few minutes later, she came back, holding a bottle of sulfuric acid and splashed it on me. The two walked into the hospital's garden. The sunlight made Yè Xīn shiver. The scarred woman spoke more urgently now, as if reliving that moment. "That's how my face ended up like this. After that incident, I was in so much pain, which was only natural. But they must have feared I would seek revenge, so after treating my wounds, they locked me away in here." The scarred woman said bitterly, covering her face, unwilling to relive it further. Yè Xīn began to feel sympathy for her. But not long after, the doctors realized I wasn't mentally ill, so they let me out of the hospital and I went back to work. When I saw that man again, I couldn't hold myself back and charged at him, strangling him. Yè Xīn was about to scream but couldn't because the scarred woman had already grabbed her throat, growling, "Why? Why didn't you look at me until my face became like this?" It turned out she was speaking in metaphor, but Yè Xīn, not thinking clearly, swung her arm to hit the woman, only to find that her punch lacked any strength because her throat was constricted. Although it was the free activity time, nurses still monitored the gardens. But the scarred woman had intentionally led Yè Xīn to a secluded spot behind a fake mountain to escape their watch. A few patients walking by eventually saw the violence and the nurses rushed over to pull the scarred woman away. "Don't worry. We'll move her to the psychiatric ward. She's been deceiving others for a long time. She had stabilized for a while, but whenever she sees a beautiful young woman, she reverts to her cruel behavior. She suffers from delusions. She once loved a man who was married, but he ignored her. However, she twisted the truth and believed that his wife wanted to harm her. So, she destroyed her own beauty." The nurse comforted Yè Xīn, who was still shaken, telling her a story that most patients here were aware of. But Yè Xīn didn't hear a word of it. She lay motionless on her bed, staring at the high ceiling. A question repeated in her mind: is this how my life will go on? Did those female students who were once in psychiatric wards lose all hope because of similar experiences? The intense headache returned. Late at night, the duty rooms of the nurses were dimly lit. Yè Xīn, helpless, drifted into sleep. How long until she had a beautiful dream? It seemed that tonight, she had a pleasant feeling, hearing the sweet sound of piano music and a beautiful female voice.
The bright moonlight, the sorrow in my heart, my hair touched with silver. I miss my love so much. The cold moonlight, hard to erase the sadness. My heart is empty. Why hasn't the night ended? Walking in solitude, sorrow tears my soul, longing deeply, standing by the study window, hoping to chase the waning moon, to go with you everywhere.
The voice and the sound of the piano seemed so familiar, like something I had heard in my dreams before. Yè Xīn knew that it was the melody of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. Could it be that the same tune had echoed in her nightmares before? But why didn't she recognize it? Was it because she was in a dream? But isn't this a dream right now? How could it be so clear? The singing and the piano sounded so strange, as though they came from a distant horizon, yet it felt like they were gently soothing her right here in this room. Yè Xīn got up and walked toward the source of the sound, moving to the corner of the room near the window. In the dim light, she saw a figure in white, with long hair falling beneath her shoulders, standing by the window singing. The voice was like a sound of nature. Maybe I'm dreaming. But Yè Xīn didn't think further. Such a beautiful voice, even if it was a dream, still made her feel very comfortable, just as long as she didn't see that mangled face. Suddenly, the singing stopped. The person in white, who had been singing, turned her head. Through the curtains, Yè Xīn saw a mangled face. A scream mixed with sobs echoed throughout the patient ward. The woman in white smiled faintly, raised her hand to peel off her face. The torn face disappeared, revealing the face of the old woman Wang Lan San. It turned out the mangled face was just a mask, skillfully painted to look incredibly real. Hearing the noise, two nurses quickly ran in. Upon seeing the scene, one nurse scolded sharply, "It's you again, Ba-san. Could you please stop disturbing Yè Xīn?" The other nurse went over and pulled off Ba-san's long wig. "Where did you get these dangerous items? Patients are forbidden from using them in here." Ba-san, who had been curvaceous, now stood rigid and expressionless. "I'm the one singing." She came over and listened. "So why are you saying I disturbed her?" Her pronunciation was soft and round, like a girl's voice. At this moment, the sudden terror that had gripped Yè Xīn began to subside. She looked straight into Ba-san's eyes, which seemed both melancholic and carefree. It was as though she had seen those eyes somewhere before. So, who is Ba-san as a patient? It seemed she had somehow relived Yè Xīn's dream. How much did she know about the 405 murder case? The nurse helped Ba-san back to her bed. Yè Xīn followed and asked, "Who are you?" Ba-san turned back, smiling brightly but answering off-topic, "Do you think I sing well?" A smile that could make one's heart tremble. How could a woman in her 70s have such a smile? "Very well. I didn't expect you could sing so beautifully. Then I haven't wasted over 20 years of my life. But, in the end, I'm just a washed-up person, only knowing how to play the piano and sing," Ba-san sighed sadly. "Hey, really, who are you?" One nurse said, "Come on, Yè Xīn, go back to bed. That role she played tonight, she rarely uses. I can't even remember it." A middle-aged nurse laughed and said, "Well, that means I have to scold you for not improving your skills. This is the role of Zhuang Yun, which she rarely uses. I've been here a long time and have witnessed it a few times. It seems she only performs it for the students." Who is Zhuang Yun? Why does she resemble the girl in white that I always see in my dreams? What does she have to do with the mangled face? Who is Ba-san really? The different personalities she takes on, where did they come from? I heard that most people with dissociative identity disorder usually play two roles, but why does Ba-san transform into so many? Could she play more bizarre roles? Yè Xīn returned to her bed, filled with doubts, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. The name Zhuang Yun was completely unfamiliar. Yè Xīn mentally went over the names of the students in the 405 case: Xiang Yuhong, Du Jing, Li Shuyan, Xia Xiaoya, Wu Na, Zhang Tianlu, Shen Weiqing. None of these were Zhuang Yun. Could she be the starting point in this series of victims? Yè Xīn continued her train of thought. It's strange, the first victim, Du Jing, never went to a psychiatric hospital. Yu Hong, who was Du Jing's close friend, was in the hospital when Du Jing jumped off the building, meaning she avoided the death that befell the first-year student. But a cold, eerie energy had covered room 405 to the point where Du Jing also jumped from the building the next year. Then the school not only had to close the room but also instituted the rotation policy, meaning that after completing their first year, female students had to move into the dormitory of the senior students who had just graduated, thus passing the fatal fate on to the new students. Reflecting on Du Jing's case, if I'm still in the hospital on June 16th, will I be able to escape the disaster? Unfortunately, like me, you must die for sure. A girl's voice echoed in Yè Xīn's ears, spoken with a Jiangnan accent. Yè Xīn's heart skipped a beat, and she almost screamed. She widened her eyes in the dim light and saw a girl sitting on a chair beside her bed, her hair cascading over her face, making it impossible to see clearly. Who are you? Yè Xīn felt incredibly strange, but she suddenly became brave. She didn't press the call button for help. I'm Xiang Yu Hong. The chilling sensation slowly enveloped her, not because Yu Hong had been dead for a long time, but because the girl standing beside her seemed to have penetrated her thoughts. This ability was enough to make someone feel suffocated. But fear was like a drug, it could be addictive. At this moment, Yè Xīn could have screamed or pressed the call button for help, but she only straightened up slightly and decided to ask, though fear still trembled in her voice, Xiang Yu Hong died 16 years ago, so, are you a person, or a ghost? Do you believe in ghosts? Before, I didn't believe, but now I'm not so sure anymore. So many things have happened to me that I can't explain, and I don't know if I should trust my eyes and ears anymore. Back then, I worked for the production team in the mountainous region of Guizhou. The village was located beneath a desolate cliff, where several coffins were hanging, a burial custom of some minority groups in China. Instead of burying the body, they place the coffin on the cliff, and in some places, they don't even place a coffin. The villagers all said that there were ghosts on the cliff and in the deep gorge, but a group of us students, bored and wanting to dispel superstitions, went there in the middle of the night. We even bet that whoever got scared and turned on their flashlight would have to treat everyone to a meal. We went there several nights, and nothing happened. Later, we all returned to the city, and everyone was still healthy as usual. All of that is superstition, right? If someone else told me that, I'd believe it, but you're speculating. I didn't say anything to you yet. Du Jing leaned forward slightly, pointing at her temple and said, everything is here. Whether it is or isn't, it's all here. Then what happened in that spring? My closest friend, Du Jing, died. Why did you end up in the hospital? They said I had schizophrenia. That spring, I suddenly started hearing voices that others couldn't hear, seeing things that others couldn't see. I often heard someone whispering in my ear of moonlight, but I didn't understand what it meant. I often dreamt of images from the Cultural Revolution at the Second Medical University in Jiangjing. So, I asked everyone around me, what is moonlight? Does it have something to do with Jiangjing Medical University? But no one answered me. Instead, they put me in this hospital. How did Du Jing die? Is it related to your illness? It's unrelated to me. But she was sure to go. From calm, Du Jing shifted to restlessness. Why do you say that? The voice, besides moonlight, often mentioned June 16th. I had a dream I haven't dared to tell anyone. It was about a girl in white, a beautiful piece of music, and a disfigured face, right? Something like that, but there was also a shadowy figure jumping off a building and a Western-style clock on the wall that always chimed exactly at midnight. That's horrifying. The image of the person jumping and the Western clock didn't appear in Yè Xīn's dreams. Should she feel relieved? I had a feeling, I thought something might happen on June 16th. When Du Jing came to visit, I told her not to sleep in room 405 that night, and she should find a way to sleep on the first floor. I told her not to tell anyone, otherwise, my chance of leaving the hospital would become even more distant. This thought was truly foolish, especially for a psychiatric patient. But I was really worried about Du Jing, my very close friend. She did keep it secret, but she didn't listen to my advice. You had a feeling, then why did you end up in the same dead end the next year? Did you commit suicide? I don't know, maybe I did. Before I died, I was severely depressed, probably because of Du Jing's death, which had caused me to collapse. I was still searching for the origin of moonlight, but made no progress. I was so discouraged. In April and May that year, I was in the hospital, and by the end of May, I was discharged. The following events, you already know. Why would you not know what happened to you? Why are you telling me all this? Whatever fate has planned, it can't be changed. Wan Lan San, why should I believe you? Yè Xīn suddenly reached out to press the help button, but her hand froze midair and stopped there. She sighed, please go back to sleep, Ba San, I'm tired. I am Xiang Yu Hong. All right. Hong, you're a knowledgeable person, I'm tired, I want to sleep. It was then that when Du Jing raised her hand and pointed at her head, Yè Xīn realized the bony hand couldn't possibly belong to a young girl. She guessed that Basan was playing some strange trick. Though the scar-faced woman was wicked, what she had said wasn't entirely false. It seemed like Basan was determined not to let Yè Xīn go. Why did she insist on doing this? Was it just random antics of a schizophrenic? Yè Xīn suddenly had the thought that she shouldn't provoke someone suffering from dissociative identity disorder who was lost in another persona. Perhaps she could use Basan to uncover more about the 405 murder case. But could this be like playing with fire and burning oneself, plunging into even greater danger? Basan yawned and covered her mouth, now clearly exhausted. She didn't disturb Yè Xīn anymore, stood up, and turned to leave. After a few steps, she turned back and said, I forgot to tell you, among us students who played around in the gorge by the cliff, by 1978, I was the only one still alive. The sound of footsteps gradually faded, and Yè Xīn couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the figures of those students, like souls drifting in the deep gorge by the cliff. What did Basan mean by that? She was schizophrenic and could easily mimic someone's language and gestures, but why did she know so much about Xiang Yu Hong, even describing the deep secrets of her so vividly? Of course, all this could just be a well-crafted lie. Many thoughts rushed through Yè Xīn's mind, and she felt a throbbing headache. It's really a curse, being stuck with people like the scar-faced woman and Basan all day. It's a miracle I haven't gone mad yet, let alone solve any mysteries. Maybe I should rest for a while now. After all, my nerves have been so tight, it feels like I'm walking on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall at any moment.